Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for being here. My name is Alessandro Bonanno. I'm at Colorado State University. So I just drove here less than an hour. Isn't that awesome? Now, my presentation is going to be different in the sense that this is just a lot of some preliminary results and mostly a conversation starter. I have a bag. I'm Italian, I should be loud. Okay. Okay. Now, I'm going to try to avoid comic relief as much as possible. Now, but regardless, so I've been thinking about do some research on food insecurity, obesity, and nutritional quality. And because unfortunately I have a background in food science and nutrition, I'm always a little bit puzzled by how economists approach this topic and how nutrition and medical literature, so medical professionals approach them too. So I have been wanting to merge the two approaches, quite unsuccessfully so far, but just I'm going to throw some ideas. So this talk is going to be about looking at what the medical profession is doing, how the metrics to measure obesity are sort of shifting away from BMI more and more, and some ideas on how we could pivot some of our research and reconcile the two. What this is not going to be about are any long literature review list of what the determinants of obesity are. These are 5 literature reviews. I want to point out that the Monasta et al. In Obesity Review is a literature review of systematic reviews. And the ones with asterisk have more than 1,000 citations. Later you will find one that has 3,500 citations. Not going to talk about those, but I'm going to mention here and there some of those determinants. And you may have your favorite paper that is a literature review on obesity. There are very many. So that we understand what we are talking about today, I'm going to talk about obesity as the medical literature defines it. So the NIH defines overweight and obesity as the increase in size and amount of fat cells in the body. It is a clinical health condition. And skipping all the way here is a condition that lasts over more than 1 year or more, as requires ongoing medical attention and limits daily living activities. It has a lot of risk factors, is associated with comorbidities. Those would be health problems, type 2 diabetes, and this pretty much, there is an excess of abdominal fat that creates inflammation. It changes some of the metabolic function of the body. I did not see BMI here once. Have you? And we will not see this BMI appearing for a few slides still. So there is pretty much a disconnect between how obesity and overweight is defined by the medical literature and also what are its determinants. So they focus on 2 types of determinants. One would be individual factors, known factors, lack of physical activity, unhealthy eating behaviors, poor sleep, stress, genetics, medicines that disrupt chemical signals of hunger, and it's very important, something that we also tend to forget sometimes, there is a very important accumulation factors. It's not because once we eat French fries, someone brought up French fries earlier this morning, it's not going to change our BMI or body weight or accumulation of cell fats if we eat them once, twice. It is a repeated process. And it's not just eating habits. So a lot of these things have very complex mechanisms. What do economists worry about? Well, in our models, of course, we are worried about the allocation of scarce resources. All along the list there, what are we missing? We track physical activities sometimes. We look at time, resource allocation, unhealthy eating behaviors. We use health. We have not a lot of data about stressors. We use race and ethnicity as a catch-all of a lot of things, partially related to genetics. We never take medicine. Homo economicus is very healthy all the times. But thankfully, from behavioral economics and some of the most recent, for the last 20 years or so, or if we go to the health production theory, 50 years. So we look at bounded rationality, bounded willpower, hyperbolic descanty have helped us refine some theory, some frameworks to understand how, quote unquote, bad choices can occur. We actually are, I think, in a way better of how we look at environmental factors. Now, this paper here has 3,500 citations and discusses what an obesogenic environment is. An environment that fosters gaining weight and not conducive to weight loss. There is a long list of things that affect the environment. I'm going to just skip it for now because I want to point out something. Perfect. Now, the idea is that BMI is used widely by medical professionals as a screening measure. If we result overweight or obese according to BMI, there are a lot of other metrics that are used by doctors to measure body fat or body fat accumulation and so forth. The academic literature for about 20 years has been trying to move away from BMI. Medical journals have. They look at body fat composition, accumulation of fat, etc. Many studies find misclassification for obese and overweight individuals. Of the many papers, I just cited one. There is a very recent paper published a couple of months, is getting more recognition. They look at BMI thresholds versus body fat, and they associate it with comorbidities. Comorbidities would be high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high abdominal fat, high cholesterol. This is what they call metabolic syndrome. If you have 3 of those, then you are in high risk also developing diabetes, heart conditions. It becomes very problematic, and you are very risk individuals. We no need to go across all these numbers, but the one thing that is clear is that even, my BMI is 26. I am overweight according to those metrics, but I just bought a fat percentage body fat scale right before this conference. You're welcome. And I am not even close to be in a risk category for my percentage of body fat. So it's different. The comorbidities, I look at some NANS data, try to understand what's the correlation between BMI for BMI ranges, and because of course we know better, we are economists, right? We can use our statistics. The relationship is highly nonlinear, and the positive relationship emerges at high values of all these comorbidities. So it's a very highly nonlinear relationship, and if we just use BMI, and we should use a highly nonlinear model probably. But regardless, there was no very clear, easy to detect patterns. If BMI is not clearly associated with metabolic syndrome, the determinants of metabolic syndrome condition, fat accumulation, is actually not that highly correlated with BMI. And there are papers in preventive medicine and other medical journals that show that. BMI is a screening measure. It does not predict obesity, does not predict any of these conditions very well. Other metrics do. So I've been trying for the last few months to link, because BMI is a weight density measure, I wanted to create a model of BMI linking it to caloric imbalances and to use our toolbox of economists and econometrics and statistical relationships to determine whether or not we can pivot away from BMI regress on stuff, also characteristics, access to child nutrition program, and so on, and have a better comprehensive measure. So pretty much, I wanted to create a model where we can look at desired BMI and observe BMI. I want to lose some weight. BMI is still the easiest metric that we have so far, easy to calculate. We put our numbers in any website, and then we cry. But the objective here is to show that even using this simplistic method, just by thinking about the density, weight density measure of what it does, not obesity, calorie accumulation over time by height, this is pretty much another measure where I need to lose this many calories over this many days or months, whatever the metric is, given my height. And there is a conversion factor for calories and weight, which is standard. So if this is how much I need to lose, how do I measure this in statistical terms or in data terms? Well, the CDC defines the total energy expenditure based on the basal metabolic rate, and I have another slide for that if time allows, but there is a function that, based on gender, age, height and weight, and level of physical activity, that is coded in a multiplier. So if we don't do anything, it is 1. If we just walk around, it's 1.2. If we are professional athletes, we multiply the basal caloric intake by 2.3, so metrics even do 3. So it's multiplier. So we can really look at how much calories we need during a day. So there are many formulas to do that. So the economist ouch is, well, let's assume that the way we link the basal metabolic rate to BMI is on what we do in terms of the jobs we have, the income we have, the observed characteristics, and there could be a component that is fixed, doesn't depend on the caloric intake, and another one that is a multiplier of the caloric intake that we need. If we have higher income or if we exercise more, if we exercise more, is here, because that's part of the caloric need. But we might do hot yoga or goat yoga because we have money. And that means that the way that we can use this basal metabolic calories, we have other activities that help us sweat more because we can. We allocate time differently. So we manipulate this, and pretty much we can create just a very simple equation. In a way, I just use a very simple nutrition model of weight accumulation. And they put an economist twist, and now we can see whether or not we can capture how some of our usual suspects affect caloric intake over time. So we need to define two things. One, so I use Italian public access data because they have two things that some US data do not have. They have stressors, and I have the data. So I wanted to do food apps, but there were other issues with the public access. So doing this, pretty much without going to too much detail of what the methodological and econometrics issues are, stressors, education, marital status, fixed effects, what not, only use individuals who are normal weight and above. I had to use maxillary GLS. Why? Because we have an heteroscedastic error term, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is how much weight, how many calories I should lose per month if I want my BMI to be comparable to the one in my same age range, in my same gender, and my same height that is in the lowest percentile of the data. So I need to lose about the models, 3,000 calories every month, 3,600 calories, and I'll tell you exactly how much I need to exercise in 2 slides. So, but that is pretty much the models tell me that 2 of the major contributors are stressors and education. And there are a lot more variables that are not shown here. But I wanted to emphasize that if someone in that survey expressed that they were experiencing family issues, that adds 100 extra calories that they will need to use, which means over a year, that's quite a bit of chunk of BMI added to them. So it's harder for them to sort of multiply that basal calorie to lose more weight. But for people who have more education, again, higher education, they also have higher income and so forth, they have means to accelerate that process. They can burn more calories. Their calorie imbalance is substantially lower than individuals who are not highly educated. So in a way, this model is inherently nonlinear. So we translate those 3,000 calories per month in BMI points. How much to exercise? I need to exercise, if I want to lose this many calories, 120 days over the amount of a year. And that means going from moderate exercise 2-3 times a week to hard exercise, which is 4 to 6 times a week. I'm not saying from sitting down to walk. It's a higher level of exercise. But again, so I just wanted to point out that there is a push in the medical profession to move away from BMI. The argument is very valid because BMI is very imperfectly correlated with comorbidities associated with inflammation, heart disease, and all the things that we as economists perhaps don't worry about because it's all an allocation of scarce resources, right? But we can use our tools if it is true that studying socioeconomic and policy-related factors associated with fat accumulation beyond the point where comorbidities emerge. That is how overweight and BMI is defined by the NIH. Accumulation of fat, at some point, comorbidities emerge. It is not BMI. We can still use our tools, but we need to be a little bit more creative and perhaps really dig into what we know, not just of economics, but also of nutritional science. Thank you.